Hello there, and welcome to another review. In this case, it's the Jackass 4.5 review. Now, a few weeks ago, 3 weeks to be exact, I did a review of all the Jackass movies. However, obviously, 4.5 wasn't released at that time, so I felt like, well, why don't I just talk about it now? What was my overall thoughts on 4.5? Sort of as an additional Jackass review for the sake of it. So 4.5 was released 3 days ago, as of recording this. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was actually really, really good. And in my opinion, it had a few things which I thought was better than the actual movie. And I'll hopefully get on to that later on. Now, some of the things that I kind of wanted to see in 4.5, which I sort of addressed in my Forever review, or the section when I got to Jackass Forever, was some of the new cast members. They didn't really get as much screen time, in particular Rachel Wolfson, who was given all these interviews, and touted as the first female Jackass star, and yet she only appeared really twice, 4 times if you count the background appearances. And unfortunately, this doesn't actually improve upon her stunt count. However, I will say this, there is one thing which I think, something that I think she has potential in, and this is, she is actually quite funny. I haven't seen any of her live shows or any of the comedic acts she does, because obviously she's a stand-up comedian. However, some of the gags she had in the actual 4.5 or the deleted stunts, I thought were pretty good, and it's kind of a shame that the main movie kind of neglected that part of her. She just felt like she was just there as a guest star. It's funny because I also forgot to mention someone else that was in the in Jackass Forever, and I think I've forgotten his name again. I think he's called Eric. I believe he was British, and he was another Jackass new member. However, I actually don't remember him that much from the actual main film, and it wasn't until this latest 4.5 that I realised, holy shit, that guy was in this, wasn't he? And once again, he feels kind of not really there. Not really worth adding him to the credit, if I'm perfectly honest. But as for the other newbies, obviously Jasper and Poopies are probably the best. They're just absolutely fantastic. I love some of the cut ideas and stunts they're a part of. And of course, Zach as well. Like, a lot of his cut ideas were actually pretty fun. It's quite a shame that they weren't, added into the film. For example, there's this baseball one where he's painted up as a big baseball and he's just propelled into Wee Man and Johnny Knoxville. And I thought that was quite a funny idea. There's another great one which I can sort of understand why it got cut because, we'll get into it in a second. But at the same time, it was just a really good one, and that's the elephant gun. And this one had Eric Andre as a guest star, I guess you could say. And basically, they would shoot Wee Man, Preston, and Zach, who are dressed up as elephants, and they would shoot them with these with a big elephant gun, because it's not real bullets; it's a tennis ball, actually. And I won't lie, that I thought that was quite a fun idea. It's a shame that it got cut, but then again, like, given what we saw in 4.5, it's kind of understandable why it got cut, because some of the camera angles weren't very good, and obviously there was a lot of distractions happening. For example, Jeff Tremaine yelling that they want to do another cut and wanting Preston to get shot another time, and of course them shooting Jeff Tremaine afterwards, and of course then you had the toilet explosion in the background involving Danger Erin. That was quite fun, but obviously I can understand why that one got cut. Yeah, like, some of the cut ideas involving the new members I think were quite interesting. I think Rachel kind of got sidelined a bit in the main movie, because here, you see some of her comedy, some of her comedic style. And I will say she's actually pretty entertaining. It's just a shame that she was sidelined in the main film. I do still think that she does need to get involved in a lot more stunts. That's is one thing that I do think she needs to be involved in. That said, what stunts do I think kind of deserve to have been in the main film? Which ones should have been removed from the main film? one in particular, there's actually quite a few, but there's one in particular which I think, why didn't they add that in? And that is the Blindfold Race. The Blindfold Race was just hilarious. I think you had Poopies, Steve-O, Danger Aaron. No, not Danger Aaron. It was, the wee man was there, and I think maybe Dave or maybe Jasper. I don't remember which. There was like 5 of them involved, and they all wore blindfold. They had it taped up so they couldn't take it off or peek. And this racetrack where all they had to do was get to the end and finish the race. And what happens is they put a bunch of obstacles while they're blindfolded. So this easy race becomes a hard race. And it's funny because Poopy's literally just charges straight through, and he falls over and literally smacks his head against this, like, I think it was this folded up chair. And of course, I think it's Steve-O who like breaks into a shed and causes like a dent in the metal somehow. That is just such a great idea, and I don't understand why that got removed. But then you had Preston shitting himself added in. You know, it's one of those things that I felt it's like Jackass number 2. Like it's such a good idea, which I'm surprised didn't get added in. Because I'll say this, a lot of the stunts were really entertaining, and it's a shame they didn't get it added in. But at the same time, you do see some which you can sort of understand why they weren't added in. Like the old man. Like, I will say this, in the latest movie, the old man was heavily downgraded compared to previous films. And when you see some of the other ideas involving Irving Zisman, you can sort of understand why. They're not as entertaining as they could have been. Probably the best example would be Rachel pretends to be his granddaughter and asks this woman to look after him for a bit. And of course, the woman goes over to get some coffee because of an ass, and he somehow ends up on top of a bus stop. And he's in a wheelchair, of course, so he can't walk technically. He's on top of there, and he catches fire when he tries smoking. And it's an idea which I guess on paper sounds really great, but on the execution, it just wasn't as entertaining as it could have been. And of course, there's another one where you have a guy looking after Irving, and he's telling him how he tries to, get the ladies, and he basically presses a fire alarm, and a bunch of naked old men come out, as does Rachel. And of course, Rachel's freaking out, saying, "What is happening? I'm trying to work here, blah blah blah," pretending. And once again, that was something that didn't really get as much of a impact as I'm assuming they wanted. I'm assuming they wanted the guy to freak out, really. So yeah, it's quite interesting, all the cut ideas involve the old man. There are some behind-the-scenes aspects which I thought were quite interesting. It's quite interesting seeing the 2019 test footage, and apparently quite a few of it actually made it into the main film, such as the Dum Dum game and the introduction stunt, which was the one where they're human ramps basically. And it's quite interesting seeing that. It's quite interesting as well not seeing Bam in those areas in those 2019 shots, because I thought he would have been there, even if he was like in the background and you just couldn't really see him properly, because obviously he's been cut out heavily in Jackass Forever, and obviously this, I'm assuming. But yeah, it was quite interesting not seeing him there, but it's interesting seeing the test footage. I really love the initiation, I guess you could say, with the hot sauce in the ass. Like, that looked painful and looked hilarious. It reminded me a lot of the Dudesons. I don't think Dirty Sanchez did it, but I know Dudesons definitely did. I remember Yappy being sprayed twice and then being given a milk full of hot sauce. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting behind the scenes aspects. Another one in which I thought was very, very interesting is the introduction, which was with Pontius, the Pontiusaurus, I should say. I really found it interesting that was just meant to be just a random gag, similar to the volcano or the Pucano. It's just meant to be just random little gag, but they found it so funny that they added more ideas, and it just became the introduction, probably the most expensive part of the whole film. And yeah, I remember Steve-O's podcast, he said something like it was the last thing they actually filmed, because initially obviously it was just meant to be a gag, and then it became the introduction. Of course, it's the last thing they filmed, and it was like midnight when Johnny Knoxville finally said, "Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass." I thought that was very interesting. Like, I quite like the behind the scenes aspects of the other .5s. Whilst some people might find that bit more boring because they just want to see stunts, I quite like it. It was also interesting seeing how many times people were basically spunked on. The animal cum, like how many different times that happened, or the toilet cubicle explosion. One in particular really interested me, or really shocked me, I should say, was the Eric Andre one. Now, I could have sworn on the teasers, the trailers, even on the posters, that Eric Andre's toilet cubicle explosion was shown for forever and then cut out of forever. So it's interesting seeing it here. Like, I could have sworn I saw it before. I don't know. Obviously, they didn't talk about the BAM incident. They didn't obviously refer to that, but they did talk about coronavirus and how that impacted the film. And it is interesting seeing what it's like on set during that time, because, everyone's all masked up, everyone's got like gloves on, everyone's being tested every 5 seconds. Horrible stuff, really. But the thing that really, really made me laugh was this moment where Knoxville, everyone's back together again because obviously they've been in lockdown, etc. And Knoxville, they all have this meeting outside and are being told by this guy, what to do, in a COVID environment and, to test and all that, blah, 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 while filming. And unbeknownst to all of them, there's this inflatable castle that literally pops out, this bouncy castle that pops out and just throws the tables and chairs over. Everyone freaks out. It's just such a great gag. I can understand why that's in 0.5, because obviously, that is just more of like a behind the scenes, this is what happened. Once again, 0.5, 4.5, I keep saying 0.5, but 4.5, once again, details just how chaotic it is on set. Like, the amount of times people are like looking over their shoulders, fearful of what's to come. And it's funny because Wee Man is probably the most alert out of all of them. Like, he is probably the most, like, he knows what's going to happen and he still like gets hit. Like, Knoxville is obsessed with this bow and arrow, and it's got like a boxing glove on the end of the arrow, and he uses it so much, and it's hilarious. Some of the cut gags or stunts, I can really understand why they were cut. For example, there's a Steve-O one. There's two Steve-O ones, actually. One that involves this vulture. I think some sort of vulture that was meant to eat fish out of his ass. And, of course, it just didn't go well. But what instead happened was the vulture literally clawed his ass apart with its long, sharp claws. And there was another Steve-O one which involved a condom. And basically, he was using the his tour bus, all the fluid from the toilets and all that, filtration and what have you, and he's going to put it in there and he's going to drop it on his head. And he actually got the idea from, once again, the Dudesons, where they dropped a condom with water and it went all over their head like that, and it actually stuck on. It didn't go down very well, and it went through multiple takes, and of course everyone was vomiting because the stench was so bad. There's also one where, interestingly, they were actually on the Paramount studios, and it was one of the more expensive days, and yet it didn't make it into the main film. And basically they were filming a bit where Zach was going to have all this fish stuck into his flabby bits, because he's quite a large person, all in his flabby bits, and he's going to be wrapped up, and he's going to do some exercise, and he's going to come back, and he's going to be unwrapped, and they were going to eat pieces of this fish. And it's probably one of the most revolting ones out there, but it's understandable why it got cut, because it just kind of lingered a bit. Speaking of lingering, the final stunt in 4.5, which would have been a massive one, and this involves Jasper's dad, Dark Shark, who we saw a bit of in Forever, and here he's terrified of flights. He's terrified of being in a plane, etc. And basically he's forced to do some skydiving. And I get like, this is another one of those ideas that sound good on paper, but you can understand why it got cut because the execution just wasn't very good. Dark Shark's reactions, some of them are funny, but for the most part, he's dead silent. Like, Johnny Knoxville even says, like, for like 20 odd minutes, he was just dead silent, so you didn't really get much out of it. And I think that's really the reasons why it didn't make it into the film. There's not really much in it, despite the fact that they like had the pilot jump out the plane and, you know, pretended the plane was malfunctioning and all that, just really scared. But you just didn't really get scared, if that makes sense. And you know, it's like sometimes you can see why they got cut, but then other times you have like the Blindfold Race and you wonder why did that get cut. And another brilliant one which I'm surprised got cut, which was a clown fall down one. You had this professional tennis player and she's hitting some of the boys who are dressed up as clowns to knock them over, sort of like a carnival game where you know, throw a ball at some bottles. And that was a brilliant one as well. And just the amount of pain they all go through. I was surprised that Steve-O lasted as long as he did, to be fair. That one involved Eric Andre again. Like, I feel bad because Eric Andre seems to have been sidelined quite a bit in this film, even though he is technically just a guest star. But still, you know, it would have been great to see him. I love Eric Andre. But yeah, overall, 4.5. I think 4.5 in some aspects has better stunts than the actual film. But at the same time, you can understand why a lot of them got cut. And I think a lot of them got cut mainly because of pacing issues. Like, they just felt like they dragged on a bit. That said, there are some things in 4.5 that I kind of wish they kind of went into a bit more. But at the same time, who knows? Maybe there's some deleted scenes that we don't know of that are going to be on the DVD extras. If it comes out on DVD, because currently it's on Netflix. But obviously Jackass Forever came out on DVD, so... And I haven't checked that. I haven't checked any deleted scenes if there are any. Be interesting if there are, because I always liked seeing deleted scenes. It was interesting to see what could have been. Yeah, I think, you know, if you're a fan of Jackass and you're a fan of Jackass Forever, I think Jackass 4.5 might actually be good. And, you know, I think you should definitely watch it. I mean, it is good. Certainly one of the more entertaining of the 0.5s, in my opinion. Better than 2.5, probably better than 3.5. And actually, you know what? I might actually say it's probably my favourite of the 0.5s because it had a lot of great stuff in it. Like, it really did. It was really funny. It was really funny, and I loved a lot of the cut stunts. It's shame they didn't get into the main film in some aspects, but in other aspects, it's like, yeah, you can understand why. You're trying to find like the perfect ones, and yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my brief thoughts, or I say brief thoughts, I'm looking at the time, it's at 18 minutes now. Yeah, I'll see you next time.